Hi, I'm Stefan, the organizer and host of the emBO++, the next level conference for embedded software developers. The talk you're about to see is about SRE onboarding in COVID times by JC van Winkel. It was recorded at the emBO++ conference 2021, and thanks to Leica Geosystems, you can check out this video for free.
Hi, I don't know if everyone can hear me. If someone could rate, yes, excellent. And you can see me, I hope, and I hope you can see my slide. Everything good. Excellent. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm JC van Winkel. I work for Google Switzerland. Actually, that is why I started at like 3 seconds past the top of the hour, because I do this from Switzerland. I've been with Google 10 years. I've been on call for a team called Production Monitoring in Google's SRE team, which I will talk a little bit about later. And I have some 30 years of experience in teaching. And apart from that, I'm also a member for the Netherlands of WG21, the C++ Standards Committee, and there I am the chair of Study Group 20, which is all about C++ in education. And we aim to write guidelines for people who want to create a C++ curriculum so that they don't start with the hardest things first. You don't want people to start with template meta programming before they have explained how you create a class or something. So that is a little bit about my background. Now I need to get to the next slide. Yes, sorry. That's me. Nice photo from Australia with a nice Aussie hat. What are we going to talk about in this slightly less than an hour? I'll give you a brief introduction. And then we will have a brief overview of the curriculum that we have about onboarding our SREs. I will also explain what SRE is for those of you who don't know yet. Then we have this thing that happened, COVID-19, and how we reacted to that for onboarding our students. Fortunately, we are very keen on data, so we do have results, whether or not we mitigated this situation. And I will also show some lessons that we learned on the way. And finally, for the post-COVIDium, as I like to call it, lessons for the future. What can we expect in the future, and not just within Google onboarding, but everywhere else? Okay, so regarding the introduction and a little bit about SRE, I am part of the site reliability team of Google. Site reliability is a small team, several thousand people, that are responsible for keeping Google up and running. If Google is down, then be sure someone at Google is being paged and needs to fix the problem. Note, we are not an ops team like you have in some situations where the devs will throw the code over the wall and give it to the ops people, who then have to make sure that it is deployed and keeps on running. No, SRE actually has a very tight connection with the developers, and we have a nice negative feedback loop where we set goals about the quality of the service. We call them service level objectives, like we want 99.99% uptime or things like that. And the moment an outage happens, it just eats out of that 100%. And if the outage then is over, everything is still fine. But the moment we hit that maximum level of, we call it error budget, then SRE will say to the developers, okay, now we should stop developing new stuff. Now we want to concentrate on reliability only, fixing bugs. And this way you have this nice negative feedback loop where we have the maximum speed of development of new features, but also the maximum reliability that we want to have. Now, this requires a certain set of mind and a certain way of working, which is very special to SRE. And you will encounter that in the rest of the talk. By the way, Google wrote a book. I'm one of the co-authors called Site Reliability Engineering that explains it all. You might think that I'm doing gratuitous advertising here. Nothing is further from the truth, because you can actually read this book for free on sre.google/srebooks. So read it for free, and then you can learn how we do this. Now, one of the things that we follow in SRE is what we call the site reliability hierarchy, or the service reliability hierarchy. You might think as a developer that the product is the main thing that you go after. It is the thing that you want. We look at it a bit like the hierarchy of needs by Maslow, where at the bottom you have, I need shelter, I need food, and all the way at the top you have things like recognition from other people and things. So in this hierarchy, we say that at the bottom, you need monitoring. If you do not have monitoring, you don't even know if your site is up or not, and there is no way to find out that your site is down. So monitoring is paramount, the most important thing. If monitoring shows you something is going wrong, you need incident response. You need the fire department to put out the fire. Then after a fire happened, you need to have a retrospective and a root cause analysis. Why could this happen? And what is the root cause of this happening? And how can we make sure this never, ever happens again? Above that, we have testing and releases. Above that, we have capacity planning. You need to have enough capacity for your service. Above that, we have development of the service, and then comes the product. But we like to say monitoring is the most important thing. Now, why do I say this? Well, this is in our mindset. This is what we think about and talk about all the time, this reliability hierarchy. When we started our reliability training program, we mimicked this and we said, okay, we have a hierarchy of needs. At the bottom, we have monitoring, or in other words, we have attendance tracking and survey feedback. If you don't do any surveys, you don't know if your program is any good and if you need to make any changes. And if no one shows up and you don't keep track of that, you also don't know that this is the matter. Of course, given the feedback and the attendance tracking, you have to address issues. Sometimes these issues have a root cause that need to be analyzed, and you may need to write a retrospective. Whenever we create a new training, we do test teaching, we do pilots to make sure that it does what we expect it should do. Of course, just like with capacity planning for products, we have to scale operations. We educate hundreds of new hires a year at Google. We cannot do that in just one location because we cannot fly people in the pre-COVIDium, fly people to the one teaching location. So we have multiple teaching locations. And of course, we have to create or design our curriculum. And on top of everything is the entire curriculum, the program itself. And throughout the rest of this talk, I will refer back to this SRE training reliability hierarchy. But it shows that what we think is very, very important is this whole attendance tracking and survey feedback and addressing issues and retrospectives. Now, in the COVID-19 handling, we treated it as an incident. So an incident as if Google Maps is down. What do we need to do? We followed the same steps. So what we did was we had this incident. We heard that COVID-19 was preventing us from teaching in a classroom. How do we do this? Well, it was not so much the attendance tracking and the survey feedback that gave us this input that we needed to do something. We heard, and I will show you later. So we had to address this issue. And after we addressed the issue, we needed to write a retrospective and do a root cause analysis, which indeed we did, and which I'm going to share with you. But first, a little bit about our curriculum. I will show you how things have changed over time. And bear with me, please. So when Google SRE was founded, the Site Reliability Engineering department of Google within engineering, it was just founded. And whenever people were new to the team, we told them, well, go read this stuff and just take a look at what the others do. Oh, and by the way, after 6 weeks, here is your pager. And whenever you're on call and your pager goes off, just go fix the problem. So basically, we took the new hires and threw them in at the deep end of the swimming pool. And that didn't work too well. There was no consistency in the way that people did training if they received in-team training. There was no consistency in what they were learning. There was no monitoring in how well they did regarding the learning, etc., etc. And basically, many people were left on their own. We call this grokking SRE the hard way. Then in 2014, a group of SREs got together, and I'm proud enough to say that I was one of them, saying, this is not right. This is not the way how you should educate your people. And remember, imagine carrying the pager for Google search and knowing that every second that Google search is down, your Google is losing thousands of dollars and you have to fix it. That is scary. So we want to really educate these people in the right way. So this group of people came together, and in 2015, the SRE EDU team was formed. We launched our orientation program in April of 2015. We also launched a going on call curriculum about how to behave during on call, and very important that everyone who is on call is going to be a bit stressed, but it's always okay to escalate and rope in colleagues and ask, could someone come and help me? And we also have a protocol for that. In late 2017, we relaunched our orientation program, and we will base the rest of this talk on that program. In the later years, we focused on operations. SREs believe heavily in automation. If you can do something, if you can have something being done by computers, please let the computers do it. Don't do it yourself. We don't like what we call toil. Toil is work that is repetitive, is automatable, and gives no real value. So everything needs to be automated away. In other words, we were SREing our SRE training program. And yes, then we had 2 years of this new curriculum going, and it was going very well. And then suddenly in March 2020, COVID-19 started, and we needed to mitigate the problem as soon as possible. Now, a little bit about training SREs. Training SREs is not about teaching technical stuff. It is not about teaching how our cluster management system works. It's called Borg, or how Bigtable works, or our Spanner database works. It is all about building confidence so that when they go on call for the very first time, they are no nerve wracks, but they are actual, I can do this. I'm going to take care of this. And also knowing that their colleagues have their back. It is about reducing imposter syndrome, which happens a lot. And it's not about the fire hose of information. Imposter syndrome is the idea that you actually don't know why you did get hired, and that the people will soon find out that you shouldn't have been hired and that they will fire you. And whatever you apparently are doing well is just a matter of luck and not because you are actually very capable of doing that. So training SREs is all about building confidence. And what we found out from the first version of the curriculum, having 11 or 12 classes that are 2 hours long with lots of technical information does not help in building confidence. And you know actually what happens? It goes in one ear and it goes out the other ear because they can't remember all of that stuff anyway. So what should we do? One of the things that our surveys told us was that we needed more hands-on exercises. If people do hands-on exercises, they will actually gain more confidence. So exercises. Other thing that we really need to take care of is SRE culture. SRE culture is important because we don't want to be the people who say no to the devs whenever they come with a proposal of implementing a new subsystem. We should say yes, and let us help you do this in the most reliable way and in the most safe way. So SRE culture is important. Failure always happens. That is something that we SREs keep in the back of our mind. Imagine that you have a bunch of disks, let's say 5 disks, then I guess you could say that on average, every year, one of those 5 disks will break, and 5 years later, you have 5 new disks. Does this seem reasonable? Yeah, I think so. Now, what if you have 5 million disks? If you have 5 million disks, then every year, 1 million disks will die. Given there are 30 million seconds in a year, that means that every 30 seconds, a disk will die. So failure happens all the time. It is not something that we can avoid. We must be resilient. So it is about failure always happens, reduce toil. Whenever a disk fails, have the software handle it. If something happens where something went wrong that was unexpected, write a blameless postmortem in which you write down what happened and how we can make sure that it never happens again. Also important in the SRE culture is no heroism. Heroism is having someone on the team who is always there to save the day. A Superman or Superwoman who always is there to fix the thing. The problem is teams tend to rely on that hero always being there. That is not good because it means that they become a single point of failure, A, and B, it means that they will be doing all the grunge work, all the toil, which gives no real value to the team or to the service. And also it gives no real service to them because they don't get to do interesting projects and grow in their career. Finally, it is important to build a social fabric. And I must say that this environment that we are in now would work great in helping keeping that social fabric being developed in the times that we cannot be face to face. So we need to do a lot of SRE culture there as well. Now, the original training schedule that we had for SREs was we had a bunch of culture classes. We had some lunches with prominent guests in SREs who've been with Google for 10 years or so, who can explain about what it is like to be an SRE and to tell interesting war stories, because it's always interesting to, do you remember in 2003 that this and this happened and everything went up in smoke? But yeah, interesting war stories. And we have some technical talks. And then we have, in green, the hands-on classes. So we have culture classes, technical classes, hands-on classes, and these are sprinkled all over the week. Remember, this is from before the COVIDium. We also had an afternoon where we had what we called mandatory fun time. And what we would do is we would take the students to an escape room or midget golf or something like that, just to have an afternoon of fun and do some social bonding and getting together. What for us is very important. You should know that teams in SRE are 6 to 8 people. Most teams consist of 2 sub-teams, one on one side of the ocean, the other team on the other side of the ocean. And every service has their own team or a number of teams. So there's a team for Google Maps, or actually a couple of them. There's a team for Spanner, there's a team for Borg, there's et cetera, et cetera. And all of these different teams, new hires, they come together in this program. And having them together, whether they are located in the Dublin office or the London office or the Zurich office, having them together means that knowing someone in the other office and in this other team, that if they ever are on call and they notice that their service is not performing as expected because, let's say, they depend on Bigtable and something seems wrong with Bigtable, they can think, oh, wait, I met this other new hire who is in Bigtable SRE. You know what? I know this person. Let me contact them. And this way you build this social fabric. It's very important that you know, that you start building this web of people that you know and that you can ask questions from. So that's why we have the fun time and all the lunches and so on. Now, timing differed per site for local reasons. For example, our training hub in Sunnyvale, California, the average commute for people by car was like an hour or an hour and a half. So you don't want to start too early. On the other hand, in the Zurich hub, everyone lives within, say, 20 minutes of the office because public transport is excellent in Zurich. So we could start a little bit earlier and stop a little bit earlier. And sometimes we needed to squeeze the program into 4 days because of public holidays and such. And then usually the fun time would suffer, and that's tough luck. So what did we say? We don't want too many technical classes. We want everything to be around the hands-on. The hands-on is what gives people the self-confidence. But how can you give people tools in their hands when they don't even know what the tool does? It is like giving someone some futuristic tool from a sci-fi story and telling them, well, go ahead and fix the thing. If they don't know what the thing is and what the tool is, we can't do anything. So here's what we did. We created an educational vehicle. We created a photo upload service. It is super simple. What you can do is you can upload photos. You can look at the photos that have been uploaded. You can add hashtags to the photos, and you can search by hashtag. And now comes the thing. We don't just have one instance of this. So this instance runs in true Google style in multiple data centers, and in every data center there are multiple instances of everything, because redundancy, and it's a big Google application, right? And we have different components that are separate because we believe in serverless working. So we have, well, not serverless, but we believe in separating duties. So we have a front-end service and we have a back-end service. So we have many of those over lots of data centers, and all of that we call one instance. And we don't have just one instance. If you look in the, let me turn on my laser pointer. If we look over here in the top left of our screen, you see N12 there, which means this is instance number 12 of the entire. So it's as if you have 12 or 13 completely separate Google Maps instances. And in groups of three, we would give our Nooglers complete ownership over one of these instances. So they can play with it. And after they have been taught something about Google Storage, they will go look at how the storage is organized for our educational vehicle. But now it comes, all in the pre-COVIDium. In groups of 3, we would give them a phone. And in our educational vehicle, we have implemented, oh, and I love this German word, Sollbruchstelle. So must break points, deliberate weak points. We can pull a lever and then something goes wrong in their instance. And a little time after, their pager goes off and it says, you are running out of SLO, so service level objective, in data center so-and-so. Latency is getting too high. And they need to fix it. And we have prepared the breakages and the classes in such a way that what they just learned in a class will help them solve this problem. And after the first breakage that they solved, I always ask, so please tell me, can you give me a 4-sentence description of what went wrong and what you did to mitigate it? And I remember the first time that this happened when we were doing the first version of this, or first class of this new version. Someone said, yeah, well, what happened was, I can't go into detail here, but this happened and then that happened. And there were some technical words, Google specific technical words in there. And I asked them, so tell me, if you had heard these words yesterday, what have you have thought? And their jaw dropped and they said, I would not have understood a word of what I just said. So this is a great way of giving these people confidence, because the next day they will have another one of these breakages. And so in total, they do 3 breakages. And after the course, they say, wow, I did not realize that I could actually do this. So this was the situation in, let's say, February 2020. And then, well, then we needed to do graceful degradation. That is one of the things that we do to keep our services alive. If you normally in a photo service, for example, show 20 thumbnails of photos and your service is under pressure and you're getting overloaded, instead of serving 20, you only serve 10. The service stays alive, but it degrades in a graceful way. So we had to mitigate the situation. Well, of course, we had already kept track of how COVID was progressing in the world. And at some point in January, we started, well, it's probably not going to happen, but let's start a document that has several scenarios that and how we can mitigate those and what we have to do. And of course, the worst case scenario, which was no one is allowed in the office anymore, became the truth. So here is the SRE EDU COVID-19 response line. On March 3rd, we got an email from SRE leadership. You have to cancel all in-person SRE EDU training. And you should know that normally people from London would go to Dublin to have the training in Dublin. People from Munich would go to Zurich to have the training in Zurich. People from Pittsburgh and Cambridge, Massachusetts would fly to, people from New York and Cambridge would fly to Pittsburgh, and people from Seattle and Los Angeles would fly to California. And the people in Sydney would also fly to California or another place if that was shorter by. So imagine we would normally start in the second week of the month giving this training. And on March 3rd, you hear cancel all training. Tickets have been gotten for these people. Everything is supposed to be in person. We have classrooms. Everything needed to change. How do we need to run orientation? We needed to make very fast decisions and act, because actually orientation was supposed to start 6 days later. Well, the March 9th orientation, which was in EMEA, so London and Zurich, needed to be postponed because there was no way we could do that in 6 days. But the March 16 classes in the US, they all ran remotely on schedule. And I will tell you what we did to do that. And on March 23rd, we actually ran our EMEA orientation classes remotely, as they do now. Actually, currently, orientation is running in Dublin. So what was our response? How did we handle that? How could we do this? Work included, well, change all the guides and the materials for students. We don't need documents saying, well, after you have arrived in Zurich, you have to go to this address and the reception is over there, and we are on the 5th floor with our classroom, etc., etc. We needed to make new materials for the instructors, telling how to behave over video conferencing and stuff. We needed to make better other documentation for the on-callers. Yes, people are on call during orientation, because imagine that the instructor pulls the lever to actually start a breakage and nothing happens. The breakage isn't happening. The idea is when you pull the lever, we start eating out of our error budget until we hit the paging threshold. We actually have monitoring that monitors that you pull the lever here. We know it normally takes 20 minutes to get to the paging threshold. So we need to keep track of that. If we know that it's not going to happen in those 20 minutes, we page someone. So we actually page if something is not broken enough. So the on-callers needed to get new information. We created a 9-minute video with demos about how to make the virtual experience better for everyone. And this is actually a still of that video where the person speaking says, you should not have backlighting. You should make sure enough light comes from the front, because otherwise people can't see you. By the way, this video is available on YouTube as well. Communications, and we had lots of meetings to reflect the changes. We also made backup recordings of all the classes, so that in case something goes wrong with an instructor, we would have a backup tape we could play about that class. This was done in the last 2 days before we were banned out of the office. And finally, we decided, because the people in Sydney could no longer come to California or to London or to Zurich, we created a new hub, a completely new hub in Sydney. Because of timeline constraints, we cannot have those people in Sydney attend the virtual meetings from California or from EMEA. And this included train-the-trainer sessions, because our trainers need to be trained on how to do the thing. So a lot of work there. Of course, we also had to find instructors and people who do the train-the-trainer. Other work that we did is we had to rethink the exercises. Here in the right, you can see our classroom as it is in Zurich. And normally we would have 3 people sitting together as a group, where the middle person would do the driving and the troubleshooting, and the others would give advice on how to do the troubleshooting. Well, we have to rethink this, because everyone is going to be at home. So people need to share their screen, and yeah. We also increased the number of teaching assistants. Imagine that if we had, let's say, 24 students in this classroom here, we would have 8 groups of 3. And in that case, we would have a facilitator for the breakage, explaining everything, and 2 or 3 TAs, teaching assistants, that would roam the room, walk around in the room, look over people's shoulder, nudge them a bit here and there, making sure that they actually finish the breakage in the end and get this fantastic sense of accomplishment. Maybe not even knowing that they were nudged a bit here and there. But that no longer worked, because if everyone is on video conferencing, you actually need more help from teaching assistants. So now we have a teaching assistant per group of 3 students. And instead of having one teaching assistant staying with the same group of 3 people, every 20 minutes or so, we have a gong going off, a chime, dong, and all the teaching assistants shift one place, and the students have to explain to the teaching assistant how far they have gotten, what they have found out about the breakage, and how far they are in troubleshooting. And that seems to work. And that is also because of our monitoring that we have. We also added debrief and Q&A sessions so that we still have this group chatter that we normally have. I mean, we would go to, we call them micro kitchens. It's those places where you make yourself a cappuccino or an espresso and grab some snacks. There is no longer that anymore. And we would spend a lot of time over there and just chatting, you know, this bonding of the people. So we needed more time for social and informal Q&A sessions to replace the normal lunch and coffee chat. And that is actually where I think that this platform that emBO has found could be a perfect thing to use. Our new training schedule, remote, is only 4 days because, yeah, we don't have mandatory fun time anymore, or not in that sense. We squished it together a bit. We can have more hours in the day because we don't.
Wir sind hier in einem kleineren Grossraumbüro.
Bei den Leitern habe ich die Freiheit, dass ich, wenn ich anfange und wenn ich höre mit dem Arbeiten, eigentlich selber einteilen kann.
Overall, how I will do it, it's just up to me and they give me a lot of freedom.
Für mich ist die Faszination, mit anderen Leuten einen kreativen Moment zu generieren.
Great colleagues, great environment basically.
It's really nice here and I don't have any issues living here.
Am meisten schätze ich in den Leica Geosystems, dass wir ein sehr junges Team sind, sowie dass ich auch meine Arbeitszeit in einem gewissen Raum selber bestimmen kann.
And I could merge in my life hobby with my office job.
Das Besondere an der Leica Geosystem ist sicher die Kultur und die Dynamik, die es gibt in dem Team. Es ist jeden Tag ein bisschen anders.
We have good organization which will help you to get used to the company in the first couple of months especially.
Das ist sehr interessant und ja, macht mir Spaß.
Don't have to think about people commuting anymore. People are at home anyway. Otherwise, the classes are exactly the same, but we think a bit more about social and Q&A. One of the things that we do is in the beginning, we have a social session where beforehand, students will have to fill in on a slide deck that we have, 2 truths and 1 lie, where in the group, they discuss, JC, your 2 truths and 1 lie. You say that you are fluent in Danish. You say that you're on the C++ standards committee, and you say that you have climbed the Mont Blanc. I don't think that you're fluent in Danish. Ja, og så kan jeg selvfølgelig begynde at tale dansk, fordi faktisk jeg er flydende i dansk. No, I am on the standards committee and I am fluent in Danish. So no, I haven't climbed the Mont Blanc, but this is one of the exercises that we do to create a little bit of fun, but also having the people learn a little bit about each other. And normally in Q&A in graduation, the Q&A in graduation session on the last day, we would hand out t-shirts, we would hand out the SRE book, we would take a photo of the entire group, and that would then be put in the yearbook. That all, of course, is no longer possible, but we do have a Q&A session at the end where all the instructors come together again and the students can ask questions about what they have learned or not have learned in that week. So let me go full circle and back to our beloved SRE training reliability hierarchy. Did our mitigation work? Well, we know that in the service reliability hierarchy, we believe monitoring is key, and in the SRE training reliability hierarchy, attendance tracking is key, and having survey feedback. So what did we find out? And this is where our monitoring, our classes comes in. We have always been keeping track of attendance and survey feedback. So what did we find? Well, the move from in the office to remote orientation did not affect student confidence at the end. What you see here is a graph where the blue bars are confidence levels of students before they went through our program, where this here is extremely not confident, this is not confident, this is slightly not confident, neutral, slightly confident, moderately confident, and extremely confident. And you see that before we had the COVIDium, we made a decent move from less confident to the right to more confident. 1.93 points in that scale. And if someone is already in the moderately confident area here, of course, they cannot add 2 points because they can only say, I'm extremely confident. It's 1 point. So we got 1.93 points to the right, which is good. And this is our same graph, with then measured from April 2020 to August 2020. We actually did better than before. We have a 2.05 points improvement in confidence. The number of people that reported at least 1 point increase was 89 before the COVIDium and is 94% in the COVIDium. And the people who reported at least 3 points increase was 33% in the pre-COVIDium, and in the COVIDium, it is 36%. So really, probably the numbers say that we're doing pretty well. However, the survey also has open text entries. And there we see remarks like, this was very good, given the whole situation. In other words, I don't know what it would be like if we didn't have the whole situation. It might have been better, but it was pretty good, given the situation. So we were very worried, but it's playing out very well. But we see maybe that people are giving us a bit more credit than they normally do because their expectations are lower. Now, here are some of the results that in the open text. A fantastic initiative, and from my own perspective and what other people say about other places, it might be the best tech onboarding experience in the world. Wow. I think the team did a great job adapting to work from home. Thank you. Thanks for all the hard work in getting the training into video conferencing. A lot out of it. I got a lot out of it and thought it went very smoothly. I don't feel like I got less benefits from the training just because it was remote. I had fun, learned a lot, and I loved how intense it was, and I will miss it. These are things, of course, that brings a smile to our face, and yeah, very happy. So what are lessons that we learned during the mitigation? Well, students are less likely to ask questions, which means that we had need for more wrap-up sessions. Wrap-up sessions where people are encouraged to ask questions, or where the moderator of that session throws some softball questions to the experts that are in the room, and hope to get a discussion going, and in that way have the students ask questions. The students do miss the social aspects, so it's important that you explicitly plan social sessions, having a lunch together, having a yearbook together. Our graduation session was hard. Handing out the t-shirts, no longer possible. Handing out the books, no longer possible. Having a fun photo with students from that month, no longer possible. Now, what's even harder is team onboarding. After they have gone through orientation, SRE EDU orientation, they go back to their team. And there they have to learn everything about the specifics of their team. And that is also very, very hard. And that is helped by having mentors in the team. So a mentor in the team. We also give our new hires an external mentor from outside the team, so that the mentor from inside the team is there for technical questions and the procedures that the team normally uses. And the mentor outside the team is someone they can talk with about what is it like to work in Google Zurich? What if I don't like my manager? Or how do I get health insurance? Or questions like that. And usually these mentors will have lunches every 2 weeks with the mentee for half a year or so. It is important to have coffee breaks, and real coffee breaks. No technical stuff, just chatting. I mean, if I think back to time that I was in the office, I think I spent at least half an hour a day standing in a micro kitchen, chatting with random people, because that is where I hear things about projects people are doing. And then maybe a week later, I meet someone else who says, oh, I have this and this problem. And I will say, oh, you should go talk to this person because they are working on something similar right now. So this serendipitous thing you miss a lot. So have coffee breaks. We also have something called random coffees, where you sign up into the system. You say what time windows work well for you, and then the system tosses a dice and pairs you up with someone to have a random coffee with. And this can be from all over the world, depending on the time frames that you've given for this. And this is really, really fun. It's important to have team building sessions and in-team training. Teach people from within the team. And one of the things that we have found works really well is give the new hire time to study your documentation, and then have them present what they think the system works like. We would normally do that in a whiteboarding session, but we have some whiteboarding software called a Jamboard that they can scribble on the screen and draw boxes and arrows, and this system points to that system, and that hands over requests to that system, blah, blah, blah. And the interesting thing is, documentation is usually slightly stale, which means that if the new hire has found out about how things work because they looked at the documentation and also looked at the system using monitoring and introspection tools, and they write that on that Jamboard, that other team members will say, wait, doesn't it work like that? And then one of the other, oh yeah, no, we changed that, but I still have to change the documentation for this. So that works really well. And then of course, on-call training, which hopefully we've done some of as well. We also have a curriculum with a number of classes about how to behave during on-call, that you triage and mitigate, and then do debugging, and then you have a fix, etc. And another class that's all about escalations and when you should escalate and how you should escalate, and that you should keep an eye open for each other if you see that someone's having a hard time because of a thorny problem during on-call, that you say, hey, can I help out a bit? So that's very important. So these were the negative lessons we learned, things that could go better. We've also learned some things that actually turned out to be very well. Video conferencing has gotten so much better as the providers see the need for this. There was an enormous technology push. When we started in the Covidium, Google Meet, which is what we use internal in Google, couldn't do this yet, having the mosaic of different people. And within weeks, this was launched within Google, and we were all dog fooding it. We call that dog fooding when we, it's called eating your own dog food as a company. We were the alpha testers, you could say. So that really helped a lot. Initially, the teachers thought it was hard to teach to this stupid webcam. But we found out that if we encourage the students to not mute their video, that you get this image here instead of this image here as a teacher, you can see people frown. Do I understand this? Or what? You know, things like that. That really helps. And people have actually, the instructors have shown that they actually are super motivated. So that's really, I'm really happy for that. And the good thing is also that people in London would normally not have a chance to teach because they would have to go to Dublin for that. And we have people in Dublin to teach. But now they also get a chance to teach because you can teach from anywhere. And one thing, by nature, SREs are good in a crisis. And this crisis was a big crisis, is a big crisis, but having this mindset of triaging and mitigating and solving the problem really, really helped a lot. We do a lot of troubleshooting within SRE. Some more lessons. Using the SRE mindset, monitoring, talk with your instructors often, and gather feedback and iterate often. It is okay if a instructor at some point gets negative feedback. You look at that, you talk with the instructor and say, hey, how can we fix this? How can we help you become a better instructor? The student surveys were great for that. We also had a lot of automation that we did for onboarding people, for students, for putting people in our learning management system, calendaring, everything. When we needed to reschedule the classes for dozens of people, automation took care of that for us. We did not have someone click 100 times on different people and giving them different classes and so on. We also created a rollback plan for content, of course. We kept close track of what we changed and what we need to change back once we go back to in-classroom training. Which brings me to the post-Covidium. Questions for the future. Will we ever go back to in-classroom training? I don't know. It may very well be that employers have found out that it's actually a lot cheaper not to fly students around to California from Sydney to be trained, but they can just as well do it in Sydney, or that we don't have to fly people from London to Dublin because, hey, video conferencing works fine. Maybe we'll get a more hybrid situation. Another question is, if we do go back to in-classroom training, how do we keep the instructors that we now got from the non-hub, so say Munich and London and New York, how do we keep them involved? Those are all questions, and I can't see the future here, but I can tell you that because some of the areas in the world are actually thawing up a bit. Sydney is doing pretty well. So we are hard at work thinking about how can we do a more hybrid situation where we make use of the fact that people can meet each other in the office again, but we will not be in the office 100% of the time. So overall takeaways, we're still able to deliver an engaging and effective curriculum, and we're very happy with that. The instructors, they are eager to teach. We actually have what do you call that? A wait list for instructing in our program. The technology keeps improving, which makes it easier for us to teach. And the new Google SREs are very receptive to remote learning, and they are actually happy, and we are happy with the result. And of course, our remote onboarding is more easily scalable because it doesn't really matter if you teach for 50 people or 20 people when everything is remote. And with that, I will have time for Q&As. And I also want to plug our little book about training site reliability engineers. Also, this can be read for free on the SRE.Google website. But now I'm open for questions. And I see one question from Stefan. How much resources in comparison to whole SRE are allocated to teaching? Do you think it's enough? If you had all the resources you wanted, what would you add to in-person training? What would you add to online training? Will you go back to in-person ASAP? We are a small, scrappy team. We're 2 hands full of people that organize everything, but we are very depending on all the instructors. We have, remember, if you look at the number of classes we have some 12 theory classes, technical classes. We have 4 breakages that each require maybe 5 teaching assistants and a facilitator each. So we're talking about 2-3 dozen instructors per site times the number of sites that we have. So this is not what we do. I do train the trainers. I hardly teach these classes myself. Oh yes, sure. Whenever they miss a teacher, I can hop in. But we scale by having all these volunteers help us. Do we have enough people? Well, with the volunteers, yes. But we're also doing SRE education outside of SRE regarding reliability training. So yeah. Will we go to in training person ASAP? That is up to leadership to decide that. I would love that. I miss people in the classroom, but I also see that this is actually working really well compared to what we expected. But where can you then gather and have your mandatory fun? We actually do have mandatory fun. We play a remote game, something like Among Us or what is it, Code Words, or one of these online games that there are. Could sit in an area with our avatars and eat stuff in front of our computers. Oh, that's to everyone. Oh, hello. Okay, I think I've run out of time, and I want to make sure that Peter, who I also know, hi Peter, has time to set up. And so thank you all for your attendance, and I wish you a wonderful conference. Bye-bye.
If you found this video informative, make sure to subscribe our channel. Click the thumbs up if you liked it, or leave us a comment on what we could improve. If you are looking for a job in the embedded industry, or you've got one to offer, drop us a mail to jobs@embo.io. That's jobs@embo.io. And we'll make sure that you match up. My name is Stefan Bückelmann, and as long as you keep watching, we'll keep covering the internals of the embedded industry.